I don't know if we're live. If you can see me, I've tried this multiple times. Oh, I'm live. Oh my goodness, y'all. Oh, sometimes you just gotta try and try and try and try again. You all don't know this, but I talked to myself for 10 whole minutes until I realized that the little swirly ball to go live had not actually gone live, and I've been trying for the last however long to go live again in this group. so all the stuff I said was the best things I've ever said that now we won't ever hear about. But I'm so glad to actually be live, but I apologize because we're now 12 minutes late. I was technically on time, but hopefully I didn't miss you all. So if you're catching this on the replay, or if you came in here on time, I'm so sorry for that. But I'm so happy to be with you all, and I'm so happy that the live is working. I thought that maybe I was gonna have to figure something else out, like, I don't know, record this solo or on Instagram or something. But hi, Happy New Year. I am so happy to be back with y'all. I guess it's been a couple of weeks because I've been on the podcast every week, but the last 2 weeks with the holidays, we haven't been in the group. And I was just saying this with a couple of clients. I actually had a few calls just around New Year's last week because I get a little scritchy towards the end of the holidays and miss my clients. But I was just saying, I had a wonderful break. I love taking time off, but I love my work so much, and I love you all so much, and getting to do this. Like, it feels so good to be back as well. So I'm so happy to be with you all. I'm so happy to have this conversation. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for those of you, I don't think it ever went live earlier, but thanks for coming back and hopping on. I had a whole thing about how much I love you all and how important it is to love your business. We'll talk about that later though, because we're already running a little late. So I'll jump into the conversation a little bit more. So we ended the year last year. I shared what worked and didn't in 2025 and what I'm paying attention to for 2026. To scale to multi 6 and 7 figures for myself, but also with clients. It's essentially my marketing and industry predictions, though I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball, so this is more based on what I'm actually seeing work in my own business and in clients' business, as what I put in the email, just to give you a little context on why I feel qualified to speak to this. I have been in business for, this March will be 10 years. We just crossed 2 million in business in revenue. I've made multi 6 figures for years. I pay myself multi 6 figures in revenue. Last year we added 100K in additional revenue without adding on another offer, another strategy. More marketing, more work. I have an all one-on-one business model, so that was with that. Mostly through, I did open up a couple of additional client spots, but mostly through revenue share. And I closed the year at just over 52K cash from an all one-on-one model. So sharing that, some people might think that's a lot, some people might think that's a little bit more, just in terms of, my business has been very, very sustainable in years that I think have been more challenging online. We've seen a lot of people exit the space, but I've also been in the trenches. The reason I say that is that's also all from one-on-one. So I've been in the trenches for 10 years. I have a front row seat to my clients. I've worked with many of my clients for 5, a couple of them are coming up on 6 and 7 years, with their businesses to help them scale to multi 6 and 7 figures. I have a roster of about 20 to 24 clients, 23 right now for those of you who care. I don't know if it's relevant or not. But I'm seeing day to day what is actually working, what the challenges have been, what those trends are. I also, worked with my own coach who's quite successful for a long time. I have quite a few peers who I speak with regularly who are multi 6 and 7 figure business owners. So sharing that to say what I'm sharing today is coming from a place of really what I study my business, I study my clients' businesses, I study the industry, what I'm seeing, not, I don't know, some podcast I heard with like trends for 2026. So I'm trying to bring you, it's obviously not the same as if I'm coaching you one-on-one, but these are the things I'm sharing with clients and then I'm coaching them around. So I hope this will be valuable for you. What I will do is I'm going to spend like literally a minute just giving a quick recap on some of the things we spoke about on last week, and then I'll pick up because we had a lot of things, and we'll close off with what we didn't get to. I think these things today are probably more relevant for all of you. So I'm just pulling up my notes here. So it wasn't last week, it was a couple of weeks ago, but we talked a little bit about just like some basic, this is more a practical tactical thing. If you're on Instagram, I'm seeing carousels actually work quite well for a lot of people. You can hear why I think that on last week's. We talked about AI. I think it's a whole thing, but I think I have a podcast episode coming out next week with an expert on using AI to get found, to be visible, to be found for search. I think AI is an excellent, whether you use it or not, I do think we're going to see more and more people using AI to do their searching, their buying, to get their recommendations. And I think that's something for those of you who are using SEO strategies to pay attention to and to think about, because I think we are seeing a shift from less SEO driven, more to AEO driven strategies. I think we are all on the same page that using AI to think for you, to write your content, I mean, I would just say basically don't do it. I can smell it from a mile away, and I think it is harming so many businesses. But that's a conversation for a different time. But I do think a lot of people are changing the way they're searching, looking for things. So I think that's something to pay attention to this year, particularly if you're someone who's already using an SEO-based strategy. We talked about the importance of trust and relationships. We talked about offering something AI can't. We talked about being more the most you can be in terms of marketing. We talked about being the normal business owner and showing you care, which we'll talk about a little bit more today. Okay, so that's just kind of a quick recap. Let's talk about some other things here. And if you have questions, or if there's anything as I'm going through this as well, I want this to be a conversation. I don't like talking at you like when we have questions. So if you have questions, but also if you're seeing this, or if you're seeing something different, we all have, our own micro audiences, like industries, niches. So like share the wealth. I think this is helpful for everyone. There's enough for everyone to go around, so we don't have to hoard this information. Okay, so one of the things I'm really thinking about personally, and that I am seeing really to be important with clients, and I just had a conversation with a client just a couple of days about this, is yes, thinking about personal branding. I talked about this last year, and I don't think that is something that has gone away. I think with AI coming into play, and or it hasn't come into play, it is more in play, and with the trust recession, having a personal brand that is authentic, in air quotes. I say in air quotes because I don't know. I have lots of thought on the term authenticity, but we will save that for another live stream. And I think having a personal brand is really important for most of us who are selling personal services. And what I think with that is it's not just I think branding becomes one of those funky terms like marketing, where we like almost throw the word around and don't know what it means. What I really think about is how are we building depth with who we are and accessibility and building social currency. I'll explain what I mean by this. I did a free masterclass on social currency. I think this is the currency that we do not talk enough about in our space. And I think it is the number one thing every business needs, but is going to need more in 2026 than ever. I'll drop a link. We actually turned this evergreen because so many of y'all asked for like the replay of it. So I will drop the replay of that. But social currency is essentially building strategic and leverage relationships. I've always been a relationships girly, or however you want to say that. I think this is the number one thing any strategy needs always in business. But as we are going into 2026, this is the thing I would be quadrupling down on, if anything else. And I think it is the thing a lot of people are actually trying to back out of, and I think people are using AI in a way to replace this, as opposed to a tool for like automations, or to make some of their business things easier. I think we're going to start to see maybe I don't know the timeline on this. It might not be the next 6 months, it might not be the next year, but I think we will really start to see how this shifts and changes businesses. I'm already seeing it with clients who are leaning in and clients who aren't, and where that's causing positive impact or positive results, and where that's causing challenges. What I think is helpful for us to think about with this is, yes, we talk about like you are the niche, and like bringing more of you and bringing more of the personal. Absolutely. I think with this, remembering part of that is, here's the way I think about it. I think a lot of people try to build a brand without relationship. And then I think they try to build relationships through just reach and surface level things without giving people more access to them. And I think we hear that and we think that means we have to be like in the DMs 24/7 or on calls 24/7. I don't mean that at all. But I do think we have to find ways to, yes, we can have like some of the personality quirks and stuff that we share, but to bring some depth to our branding and to the relationship building, and to find some way to create accessibility. I think a relationship that is built without accessibility keeps us more in that old school, like we're keeping someone on a pedestal, we're talking at people, we are, like in that guru mentality. I think it is kind of old school branding thinking. I just think that is very devoid of an actual relationship. A relationship is a two-way street. I think, again, relationships are the thing that is going to make every strategy work and that makes you the most money. Definitely check the replay of the masterclass out around that. But I think that's the same for getting your brand to really work for you. And so I think like an easy way to think about this is like with accessibility is, it doesn't have to be for everyone, but like this could be accessibility into who you are. This can be showcasing people more of your personality, more of your journey, more of your thought process. You don't have to share your like deep and dark and twisty things. You don't have to, I don't know, I don't share quite a lot of my personal life, and yet I think I'm quite accessible for people. It can also be accessibility in terms of, I think about I think about last year, how many people, like comments DMs I responded to, or emails I responded to, or people I offered, support to, that will probably never become a client, but that built a really strong relationship. I think that could be accessibility as well. I think there's also a way, we talk about authenticity with the branding part. And again, I think authenticities are, I'm going to go off on a tangent really quickly, but I think the reason I have beef with that word is if we think about what authentic actually means, I think for a lot of us, we do have an identity as a CEO, and for whatever role we play in business, coach, therapist, lawyer, you have an identity and a role you play as a parent, as a wife, as a child, right? We have these different identities and these different roles we play. And within each of those roles we play, we are playing a role. We are asked to show up a certain way to fulfill that role. And so as a CEO, I need to show up a certain way. As a coach, I need to show up a certain way for my clients, for you. I am authentic to that role. I think about this with acting all the time, right? I have to be authentic to that role, but I am not always 100% authentic with everything that's going on with me, because that is not appropriate for the relationship I'm building and what my role and dynamic is as a coach, right? If you're a therapist, what your role is with a client. As a CEO, what my role is with my team. If I'm just always 100% authentic, right, I would just be telling you that I barely slept last night because my cat was throwing up. I could share that with you, but it would just be really easy to bring in all of these things that really aren't relevant and really aren't serving, and that actually, I think, weaken your authority, but also your ability to be in your role to do a great job with how you support clients. I think it can break down a lot. I think it creates funky boundaries, but can also break down a lot of the trust. A lot of us are holding containers for clients in different ways. I have a few clients who are lawyers, right? They are definitely holding containers where someone really needs to have a level of trust with them. They really need to show up in their role authentically as a lawyer, but that doesn't mean they need to bring all of their authenticity into that. Anyways, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole there. So yes, I think there's just a lot of talk about authenticity and branding and personal branding. Yes, absolutely. We want to bring who we are. We want to build that relationship. I want you to know me. I want you to get to know my values. I think if you met me in real life, I am exactly who I am. And I also really want to be mindful of being authentic to my role as a coach and authentic to my role as a CEO. And I think that is the part where we get into personal branding, the types of relationships we're building. That's why I call it social currency and strategic leverage relationships. These are strategic and leverage relationships. That doesn't mean they aren't real. That doesn't mean they aren't authentic. I love my clients so much. I care about them so much. I had a VIP client just before the end of the year, and she was saying, like, you can just tell how much you love your clients. You can tell how much you love your work. I consider her a friend. We hung out after our VIP day and drank champagne and had a lovely time, right? It doesn't mean that can't all be there. All of that is true. And I can also have a strategic and leverage, that is also a client, right? That is also a strategic relationship and partnership. Both things can be true. And I think that's really important for us to remember, because otherwise I think we do get a little lost in the sauce online, especially with our marketing. And I think this is a really important thing for us to be thinking about as we're moving into 2026, especially if you're kind of on the Instagram, TikTok world, because a lot of the content that will go viral is the more authentic, is the very personal stuff, but that doesn't always mean that is the content and that is the marketing that is going to drive the type of relationship that leads to the type of trust that leads to someone saying, I want to pay you and hire you, right? Those aren't always the same things. And so I think those are things we just want to be mindful of, or understand sort of like what percentage of those things to bring in together. But with that, I do think having that depth and that accessibility is really important with the personal branding, and not thinking of personal branding just as like, I just talk at people. I just put up a bunch of content. I'm just like, here's me on my pedestal, on my mountain, on my high horse. And like, I just talk at the people and then peace out and have no interaction with them. Hopefully that makes sense to y'all, and hope, if not, like, just ask me a question. I was going to say one other thing, part of this. This is the other thing I was going to say. Just in terms of the personal branding part, just to give an example of what I mean here, I regularly take a couple of classes at my gym, and the coach there has really intentionally focused on building his personal brand. He's grown his audience to over 1 million, and he is so, just with the authentic piece and building that strategic and leverage relationship piece and building that depth and that accessibility, he is so authentically himself. He brings so much depth. He really shows he cares, which I think is something, like, talking about being authentic, that's something you can't fake. I would rather you be authentic and show you care, right? Like, and hopefully you can tell, like, I care and I love this work so much. Like, you can't fake that shit, right? Like, people have a BS meter that like just ding, 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 dings. I believe in this work. Like, I think that's the kind of authenticity we want to bring. Not like every little detail of everything we're going through that like we're asking people almost to caretake us. I think that is not relevant to our branding. But he brings all of that to his personal brand. He gives so much accessibility, given he has an audience of 1 million. He's, you know, in the comments with his people. He's brings everything to his classes. And he also is really focused on, because we were having a conversation after a class, he has some comments, he has some stuff coming up, and he's just also really conscious of what his brand is, how he wants to portray and build trust with his audience, and what he will and will not post based on that. He's very, very conscious of it. And so he's still 100% authentic. But we were basically talking about haters in the comments and the difference between like when I get a hater in the comments, because a part of my brand, and I think what's important and one of my values and what I think is important as a coach for me to showcase is I'm a thought leader, and I'm going to speak to a comment and how I think about handling that as a business owner. You know, there's a lot there for me to speak to. So I will screen grab a comment and I will make commentary on it, and find a business lesson in that. For his brand, that's really, really inappropriate, especially with some of the brand partnerships he has. And so we were just talking about that difference, and it all still came through the lens of personal brand and that strategic leverage relationship we're talking about, right? Both of us might have a similar response to a comment and a similar thought process in terms of the lesson around it, but we're both going to approach that in different ways based on what those strategic leverage relationships we're building are. It doesn't mean they're not authentic or real relationships, right? Two things can be true, but because we're keeping that in mind, it's changing the way we're showing up in our approach, right? For me, it is important for me to showcase, hey, I'm going to help you navigate this if this happens for you, or here's how maybe we don't show up and get visible because we're scared of this, or here's why this is a really ignorant comment, and like the lesson around that. For his brand and his brand partnerships, right, that would be really inappropriate. So just thinking about that piece of, yes, personal branding, but remembering we want to brand without relationship. Like, that's the biggest mistake. A brand without a relationship is like no longer the thing. And relationships through reach alone, without giving people access, without that relationship building, without that depth, is also just going to make it really hard this year. I think it always does. Okay, let's go to the next part here. I talked about this in Social Currency as well, so I won't talk about it too much here, but this is a big thing I'm thinking about moving into 2026 as well, just in terms of trends. Actually, I'm going to start with something different because I think it'll tie into that, because I think this will be more relevant for some of you. I'm gonna circle back to that one, just because we're talking about personal branding and we're talking about social media. I think one of the things we're going to see, I think we're already seeing this, but I think we are going to see a return and a resurgence of long form content. I think that is going to be a really great place for a lot of people to double down if you're not already. I think, you know, we go through waves of this. I don't think long form content was like ever out, but I do think we've had like everybody's attention span is down, and we had like the 3 second. It was almost like how short, like the 1 second reels. Do you remember those? Like almost how short can we make things? I think because we've had so much of that, and because we now have so much AI generated content and slop and things where trust is down, but I think we're also, I think we are getting a bit of scrolling fatigue. And even if we're scrolling, we're not paying attention to as much. I think the need for long form content, and I also think the desire for long form content, both as a way to build those strategic relationships, right? Both as a way to like build that trust and to see if this person is who they are, and to see if it's not AI, and to like feel some of that human connection. But I think also just because we're, I think, craving things that we can't get on social media and that we can't get from AI. So I think long form content, long form original content, I should say, that is not created by AI. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I think is definitely going to be something I'm paying attention to, and something I think will be really valuable for a lot of people to either double down on, or if you're not including that, to think about. I did share this stat in Social Currency, but I think it's just helpful for us to remember. So based on a Google search, I don't know if this is the exact number. I think the numbers vary depending on where you pull this from, but Google tells us clients need 7 cumulative hours with our brand, there's that brand word again, before they're ready to invest in a high ticket offer of between 1,000 and 10K. So that's 7 hours. So we have to think about, if reach is down, if people aren't seeing, I think about this all the time, most people aren't seeing, or only seeing a fraction of what I put out there. And if most of my content is 3 seconds, or it takes you 2 minutes to read a post, and someone needs 7 hours, cumulative hours with my brand, with me, to be ready to invest in a high ticket offer. I would say sometimes with coaching, it might even be more, because I think there's just so much vulnerability, and there's just a lot there. That's 8,400 3-second reels, or 2,800 days of posting 3 times a day, which is roughly 7.7 years. And so if we're relying on short form, bite-sized, snappy content alone, that's if you're posting 3 times a day, that's about 7 years. We're waiting for someone to build that cumulative effect. Now, I think that's probably being a little dramatic. I don't know if that's exactly it, but I think this shows why just relying on 3-second reels, just not seeing that as a part of our overall ecosystem and brand, is, I think, going to be really tough for high ticket. I think it has been. I think that's why we've just seen a lot of challenges the last 2 years in business. We went from the time where I think people didn't need to spend as much time with us, and you could just post stuff online. I think people were more ready because there wasn't the trust recession, and I think there weren't as many options, and people hadn't been burned as much for all myriad reasons. I think you could get away with just posting things and having clients come through the door. And I think that's why so many people have had challenges the last 2 years, because it does just take building a different ecosystem with your marketing. And I know there's so many people out there promising that that's not true, but even the people who are promising that's not true who are telling you like they don't waste time doing all of this stuff and nurturing people and building know, like, and trust, are telling you that in content and asking you to buy a $27 thing that is building however many hours of cumulative trust, right? And then probably offering an application or a call, right? Like, they're still building an ecosystem that is building know, like, and trust. And so I think we're just going to see more long form content in various forms. I think email marketing and Substack, not something I'm on, but I have a couple of clients who use that. I think we're going to see just, I'm already seeing that, but it's like funny, it's such an old school thing, but I think people are just wanting to be, not everybody, but I do think people are wanting to consume things off of social media. I think it's not why I brought the podcast back, but it is a reason. I think the podcast is performing pretty well for us pretty quickly. I think one of the reasons is I do think people are craving some long form content in some ways off of social media where they're less distracted to consume that. So I do think people just want something, deeper off social media. Okay, I won't overtalk that too much. I'm just going to see if you have a question. Okay, I don't think so, but let me know if anything comes up around that. I wanted to say something around the brand piece. Oh, the reason I was talking about the personal brand, I do think this is important to say. The reason I'm talking about the personal branding and all of this here, and the reason I'm thinking about this so much as we're headed, I've always thought about this, but as we're headed into the next year, I think the annoying truth, I feel like I talk about this a lot. I'm going to use myself as an example from when I was acting. One of the harsh realities I learned, for those of you who don't know, I spent a decade in Los Angeles acting. I did a dozen indie films and a dozen commercials. So, I did some stuff of varying degrees, like of budgets and that sort of thing. One of the things I really learned in those 10 years acting is, one, the craft of acting matters, but so does the business of acting. I think it's where I learned so many of my business skills without realizing I was learning how to be a CEO. As an actress, you are a CEO of a small business. And what I saw is there are so many people who care only about the craft and the talent of acting, and they basically never work. And there are a lot of people who just care about the business of acting, who don't have a lot of talent and craft, who work a lot. And then there are people who have both, right? And you've got like the Meryl Streeps of the world. And what I really also started to see is, your talent, it's assumed that pretty much everybody has talent if you're auditioning for things to varying degrees. But what they also really care about when they're looking to fulfill especially larger roles is yes, okay, if there's 1,000 people who could play this part, or there's probably like 10,000 people who could play this part, they're also looking at who has that brand recognition. And that brand recognition meaning they have built an audience and a relationship with them, so that when we put them in this show, when we put them in this commercial, when we put them in this movie, because they built a relationship with people, those people are going to want to come watch them, because this is still a business, right? And that is how they make money. And it was just such a thing for me to see where I'm like, yes, my talent matters, but so does this other piece here. And if I don't focus on this, and it's actually one of the reasons I stopped acting, because I loved the craft of it. I stopped loving the business side of it it's kind of a toxic industry in my opinion. I'm happy to be on the sidelines watching my husband navigate. I think it's a little bit different for a male. But I think it's the same for us in the online space, and that's why I'm harping on some of these pieces here. It's why I harp on branding. It's why I harp, or personal branding, I should say, on the strategic leverage relationships. It's why I harp on marketing. I know if you're watching this, I know if you're a client, like all of my clients are so talented. They're so good at what they do. I know if you're here, you probably care deeply about your work and your clients. I know like the number one thing I care about is the craft of my coaching and my clients and their result. And that is so important. Like the number one thing that matters is that we are good at what we do, we're in integrity, right? And that we can help our clients get results, right, in our deliverability. The second thing that matters, though, for us to be able to have a business that is profitable, and if you want to scale to multi 6 and 7 figures, I think you can have a 6-figure business without this. I think you can, rely on word of mouth marketing, have a 6-figure business without this. If you want to scale to multi 6 figures, I think the thing we have to realize is like the number one conversation I'm having with my clients is around marketing, is around personal branding. It's around these things because, again, what it comes back to is it kind of doesn't matter how good you are at what you do if people don't know about it. And if people don't have a relationship with you where they trust you to be the one they pay, and sadly, there are a lot of people who are really good at the personal branding and not so good at the deliverability, who are making, I think that's why we have a trust recession, right? Who are making a lot of the money. So I feel like I went off on a tangent there, but I feel like it's a thing we don't always want to hear, but I do think it's something for us to be thinking about as we go into 2026, because this is an incredible industry. I don't think this industry is going anywhere. I think some jobs will get replaced with AI, but I think there's a lot of room for all of us. But I do think when we keep talking about how things have shifted, they've shifted. Like that's done. It's happened. I think these are the things we have to, that we just have to be paying attention to if we want to take our businesses to those levels. And if not, that's okay. Like I think a 6-figure business is a beautiful, wonderful thing for most people. I think then it's maybe less required. Okay, with that. I also think this is more of a prediction, but I think this year there's going to be a much bigger focus, and this might just be helpful for those of you just even thinking about how you want to position things, how you want to message things, what you want to think about talking about, depending on what industry you're in. Hold on, I need a sip of my coffee. But I think our online space has grown up and matured a bit. We are still in our infancy, but I think we've gone through some maturity, and what I'm seeing is I think we went through a phase of, like, let's be a girl boss, let's make as much money as we can, let's make gazillion dollars, like, and like shiny, like I'm on my yacht and my plane, and I don't know, about all this stuff. And I think there will always just be a part of the industry that has that. I talked about this a little bit on the end of part one of this in terms of like being the normal business owner, but I'm going to give some more context. I think what we are now seeing is a lot of us have matured and grown up in business, and we're entering a season of, I think people really want to learn how to be CEOs, run their business like a business, and have a sustainable business. I think people still want to scale. I think people still want to make lots of money. I know I do, but I'm just looking at even just messaging in some really big people's businesses and how that's shifting, and just noticing the difference in when like clients are coming in and what they're looking for. I have plenty of clients who make $1 million. I have plenty of clients who want to make $1 million or more in business. I'm not saying that isn't still a thing, but even the way in which I'm hearing people talk about it, it really is more through the lens of like, I want to build a solid business. I want to know how to do this in a way that's sustainable. I want to know how to do this in a way that doesn't burn me out. I want to know how to do this in a way that, I think sustainable is just like, I don't want to scale just for the sake of scaling. I want to do this in a way where I can keep making this money for a long time. Otherwise, it's kind of not worth it. And I do think that, I don't know, I've probably been preaching that for a long time, but I don't think that was actually what was popular in our space. I do think we are seeing a big shift. I think a lot of people got burnt out and I think a lot of people exited the space for this reason. I think a lot of people burnt out. This is what I said, the recording that didn't, when I thought we were live and we weren't. I was having a conversation with one of my clients, and I think this keeps her confidential. I don't think I'm sharing any, I want to be very mindful. But one of my clients who's excellent at what they do, but she essentially just got burnt out, and I think didn't have the what it takes to run a business, and didn't have the love for that part of it anymore. And so she's decided to shut down that business and to do her work in a very different way and kind of pivot things. And I think just even like that conversation with her, we were just talking about what is required online to have a business work. And I don't mean not to say that in a scary way, but I do think it is just different than it was a couple of years ago. And I think because of that, it really is causing people to get burnt out, to leave the space, especially people who were promised a bill of goods of you can just show up, post 3 times, make $1 million, work 2 hours a week, right? I think so much of the space for so long sold these things, as opposed to, I think now we're just coming into a space of people realizing, oh, like this is actually very real. I can make a lot of money. It's just going to require me to actually build a real business and to run an actual business and to have actual strategies and systems and processes and to show up for them and to learn how to do that and do that in a way that's sustainable. I think it doesn't sound sexy, but I don't know. My prediction could be wrong, but I feel like start to pay attention to what people are talking about. I think we will see a lot more of this talk. And if you're in a space where you cater to business owners or, you know, even like fitness and health, I think we're seeing more like there will always be people who promise get, I don't know, skinny, lose weight, fit in your jeans, overnight fast, all of those things results. I think we're seeing that in the fitness and health space as well, right? I think we're seeing a trend towards people wanting, caring more about like what's sustainable, what's going to help me have longevity, what's going to help me do this in a way that I can keep this, that can last. And again, maybe this is just like my lens because this is what I care about and I've always thought about. But I think I've always thought about this for the 10 years of business and talked about this and preached this. And I don't think I always thought I saw that. I always feel like I was like over here on my little island, like, hey, listen to this. And now I'm seeing more and more people talk about this and ask for this. So I could be wrong, but if this is landing for you, it might be something if you know, whatever industry you cater in, to think about how you could apply that to your messaging, to your marketing, to how you're thinking about structuring things, because I do think that's something people are craving. I think the state of the world probably also has something to do with that. So that is more an actual prediction. Okay, let me pull up. I'm going to go back to, let me just see if there's a question. Tara says that tangent, the tangent was needed. Oh, thank you. I've had so many tangents today, so thank you for reflecting that. And curious your thoughts on any of this as well. Please feel free to chime in. I love hearing other people's thoughts, or if there's anything you're seeing or disagreeing with. Okay, there was something I said I was going to come back to. Oh, this is what I said. Well, I'm just looking at the time because we started late. Okay, I'm going to share two more things here. I think we can get them. I'll be kind of quick with them. Okay, so this is something. I mean, I guess this is a prediction, but I think this is what worked in 2025, and I think it's going to work, and just be something to continue to think about as we're going into 2026. Actually, Tara, this is like, it's so funny. I wrote these notes probably a month ago, the beginning of December, and as I was thinking through them, and I think this one will speak to you, but I think we are just seeing more of a desire from buyers, from people who are investing, for offers with more personal support, more implementation, and something AI can't do. Or more in person, or more access to you. So, I mean, I'm saying a lot of ors here, but essentially the point is, I think people are wanting, they're wanting something that AI can't give them if they're going to spend money on it. And I think that makes sense, whether that is conscious or subconscious. I think we are just in such a different landscape. And I think they're also wanting something they can't get from social media. And I think a lot of people have also been burned. And so I think with that, it just shifts the way we're all thinking about offers. I've had clients where we just have to restructure things a little bit, or think about what we're including. But I'll just repeat that. I think that just means whatever your offer is, you know, if you've always just had a passive offer, it doesn't mean that it can't still sell. Like, I think there are certain offers, if it's something AI can't teach, right? If you have a very personal method, or if you teach something in a course that AI can't teach, I don't think you would necessarily have to have these components. But if this is something that someone could go to AI and get really personalized support from AI, and you're selling an offer that does something similar, I think the opportunity is to look at, how can I bring in more personal support? How could I bring in some implementation? Is there an in-person, like literally a live in-person element? Right? I do think we're just going to see more in-person things thriving for all of these reasons. I think people want to get off social media, and I think we're craving connection because we're just like in the vortex of AI. But even if it's not in person, like live, I think just access, like I think about just like the access my clients have to me, for example. There's that access part in terms of the relationship building. Because as of right now, those are things AI cannot do. And I think those are some of the most valuable components people will still pay for, right? Those are the things we pay for: connection, we pay for personalized support, we pay for implementation. Those are the things we're going to be paying for. Those are things I would just be thinking about strategically in terms of offers. Tara says, yes, I've heard a lot of people say they're so over AI. Yeah, and it's really interesting. I think, I don't want to, I'm like all over on the tangents. I will try not to go too far in a tangent. I think it's really interesting. I know people talk about like the AI bubble, will it burst? I don't think AI is going to go anywhere. I think just the excitement for it, I think we're seeing I think we're just seeing its limitations. I think there are a lot of applications. I think there's a lot of concerns. I mean, environmental concerns, what it does to our brain. I think social, I think there's a lot of concerns there as well. I do think we've had AI for Canva is AI. So I think we'll still see that it is being used. It'll be really interesting to see what happens over the next year or two in terms of, do we have a bubble with that, or does it kind of even out, or is it something completely different than what we expect? But yes, I think a lot of people are, I think what you're speaking to in terms of being over AI, I think all of us in the online space are over AI content. I think that's the thing most of us are over. Like, it is, like, I want to, like, both have compassion for, like, I get it. It's like, if you're busy, like, using AI to make your life easier, but it's also, I'm just like, oh, it feels like I'm on, like, the most congested highway of crap, to be transparent. And I think that's why we have a recession. Like, that's why we have so many issues online, in terms of, like, building relationships. Okay, I'm gonna get off my tangent though. The last piece I will say here, in terms of what I think worked last year, I think this has always worked, but I'm definitely focusing on this for 2026 for all the reasons we're talking about. I think AI is such a big part of this conversation. I mean, look, AI, it's like the internet, right? Like, we cannot ignore, like, the conversation I'm having next week on the podcast, Sam DiNicola, she said something, I wish I could quote her, but she basically said something along the lines of, you'll hear when you listen next week, but along the lines of, like, whether or not you use AI, whether or not you like AI, like, it's here, we can't ignore it. And I think that is just, I mean, so much of this conversation and the last conversation here is, even if we're over it, it is also here, and we kind of can't ignore it. And so we can't ignore it, and then we can become a blockbuster, or we can, like, say, this is here, this has massively impacted our industry. What do we do about it? And so we talked about all the other things on this conversation. The other thing I'm really thinking about, and that I'm talking about with clients, and that I talked about in Social Currency as one of the 3 parts of my framework in terms of how you build those strategic leverage relationships, is doing things that don't scale to scale. I feel like I'm always the person who's like, here's the unsexy stuff in business, but I really think when, like, nothing will scale, I'll put it this way, nothing has scaled my business and my revenue more than doing things that don't scale. And I feel like that is such a backwards concept, but I pulled this quote up. This is a quote from Rich Litvin, whose coach has made, like, I don't know, $1 gazillion. He's someone I actually really respect in his work. And I pulled up his coach, his quote. So he says, astonish people by doing things that don't scale to scale. And so I think when we're in a time where AI can give you information and can do pretty much anything, and people are leaning into AI for coaching and for therapy and for all the things, whether or not they should, right? I think I've shared with you all, I have a client who's a lawyer, and someone to send her a contract that AI did for them, and it was missing 16 important legal components. So it's not like AI always gets things right, but the way we can stand out, right? The way that you can scale your business is to astonish people by doing things that don't scale, because in an AI-driven world, in a world where we want everything automated and easy and hands off and set it, forget it, and passive revenue, and we, like, come from an industry that was in its infancy, promised, it was like the wild west, and going out to California to get gold back in whatever time that was, right? Like, it's like, go online and you'll make $1 million by posting once, right? Like, that was the promise of the online space. So in that space, everybody wants to scale. Nobody wants to do the things that are actually required to scale. If you're someone who is willing to do the things that are required to scale, which is often things that don't scale so that you can scale, like, you win, and you win in a world where most people won't do that, and they're going to try to take the other kind. That doesn't mean there isn't room for automation. That doesn't mean you can't use AI as a tool. That doesn't mean, I mean, we have systems and processes and strategies and automations and all of the things. I'm not saying that everything needs to not be done to scale, but when I look at what have been the biggest levers, when I look at those things, it has definitely been focusing on things that don't scale to scale. I added $100K in additional revenue to a multi-6-figure revenue with an all one-on-one model. Do you want to talk about what people have told me is the most unscalable thing? I did that. I mean, yes, I have a revenue share model, and that is in some ways infinitely scalable, and, like, technically actually really passive revenue. But I trade time for money. If anything, I over deliver. If anything, I give my clients way more time and access to me than, like, I'm contracted to, with joy, and because I want to. I have boundaries and all of that as well. probably share way more content than I need to. I am willing to get on calls with people more than I need to, right? I'm willing to, like, there's just a lot there that I do that, and from a boundary place that makes sense and that is still strategic. But I'm just very aware that getting on a call with someone, while that is not a scalable action, that can make me tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars in my business in a way where trying to automate and spray a gazillion, I don't know, posts online might get me viral, but will make me $0 in my business. And so I think sometimes we can kind of really miss what actually drives results in our business. And yes, there are scalable actions, and we have to have a scalable business model, right? We need scalable strategies. I'm not saying don't do everything that doesn't scale in your business. That is a quick recipe for burnout. I am not saying don't have boundaries. Please don't hear that conversation the wrong way. Definitely check the replay of Social Currency out. But I do think in the current landscape and in the landscape that has matured, again, I really just think our online space has matured. Most really large businesses, companies outside of the online space that have scaled, and like scaled in a way where they are scaling like by billions of dollars, hire a lot of people to do things that don't scale so that they can scale their revenue. So again, it doesn't have to be done by you, but I think if companies that are making billions of dollars are doing that, there's something for us to pay attention to. There's a reason for it. It's because those are generally the relationship building, leverage strategic actions that really matter in business. Okay, I'm gonna get off my, hey Claire. Claire says, so true, relationships. Hi, nice to see you. Oh no, Tara, I think it dropped one of your comments. It says, instead of just for everything, would you mind copying whatever you said before that? Because I feel like it was probably something helpful for me to reflect to everybody, and then I'll close us out. So I'll see if you can pop that back, and then I'll wrap us up. So yes, doing things that don't scale to scale, I think is just the last one. And then I will just close while Tara's putting this up. This is kind of something I've alluded to throughout this conversation. It's what I closed the last conversation with. I think with kind of this idea that I think more people are craving sustainability over just like massive quick fix results. I really do think that's going to be a trend. I think we're just going to see a trend more of, and I don't feel like I explained this really well in the last masterclass. I think I was talking about like being the normal business person. I don't think people necessarily want the normal business person. I think they still want to see someone who's an authority and who's got expertise and who has really intentionally created a life or a business or results, let's say you're a fitness and health coach, right? Results that they aspire to. The word that comes to mind for me, so my husband and I also chose a word of the year, and we chose the word uncommon because my goal with our relationship, I want us to have an uncommon marriage. That we already do, but that's a focus for us. Like I don't want us to have what's common. I want us to have what's uncommon. And we have a very normal marriage, right? We are a very normal couple, but we're also very uncommon. And so that's more what I mean with when I'm saying the normal business owner. This is something I'm just thinking about overall, just in terms of like that, to like bring it full circle, that personal branding piece. I think as a collective, we are craving more of that normal business person, right, that we can relate to, that we can have a relationship with, that we can aspire to, but that we can also feel like, oh, like they're like me, they get me, like I could do that too. That is also uncommon. And so not to put that pressure on anyone, but uncommon in that way of like you do hold yourself to a different standard, or you do have a different level of expertise or result, but not uncommon on the way of like I am on a pedestal and or like I am better than everybody, right? Like it is still like I'm just this normal person. I've just made some very intentional decisions, choices in this line of work that makes me uncommon, and that's why you might want to learn from me, talk to me, work with me. And so I think that is something just in terms of how maybe to think about marketing your personal branding content. I think it's just something people are craving, and if that's just a helpful lens or frame to go through. Okay, Tara says, and then we'll close this up. She said she was just trying to say we can't ignore AI. Yes, but we definitely need to use it better instead of using it for everything. Yes, amen. That's perfectly said, Tara. I agree 100%. I think you'll really like the conversation next week on the podcast. Claire said, I'm so over AI, LOL. Never liked it, haha, I'm old school. I feel you. I feel you on that as well. I think just kind of to what we were saying, a perfect place to wrap it up on. I think it's just helpful for everyone to hear as well. I think there's so many of us who are over it. I think there's so many people who really like it. I think there's a whole probably middle like ground of people who are indifferent. I think there's probably the super innovative people. I think kind of to what Tara was saying. Tara says, "Oh my God, same." You two would get along very well, by the way. I should play matchmaker, but. What was I going to say here? But I think to kind of the conversation we're going to have on the podcast next week and what Sam DiNicola was saying, I think like at the end of the day for all of us, I think there's just a good place to put it on. I think what's important for us as business owners is whatever we like or don't like, we get to choose, right? Like I don't use very much AI. for myriad reasons. And I also want to be aware, like, it is not going anywhere. And I think part of our jobs, and I think which is helpful for all of us as we're looking at, some of the trends or like what's working, what's not working, is I think it's really helpful for us to know what is the landscape, what is the reality, because even if we're not using AI, it is impacting so much of the online space. And I think that's really helpful for us to know. And in many ways, I think if we're not using it, we actually have a competitive advantage. I mean, I don't know. At least right now, we'll see where AI goes. But right now, if you can still critically think and think for yourself and create your own content, I think you have a competitive advantage. I probably talk about this a lot. I really think we are going to see, I'm seeing it with people who are clients of mine who are overusing AI. It's just really interesting how it's affecting certain things. Anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but it is still impacting so much, like the trust recession and just even reach and visibility. So I think it's just helpful for us to know, so we can make in our organic content, or even if we're not using it, we can make smart, strategic decisions in how we show up and what we're doing, so that we also get seen and build those relationships and get the results we want. But I'm totally with you both. Tara says, I never use it for content, not once. I love that. All right, y'all. I will just want to sit here and like bitch and chat about AI, like pros, cons. But I'm gonna let you all go because I do have to hop off. If you have any thoughts, if you're watching the replay, I would love to hear your thoughts. Maybe we need to have another AI conversation. There will be the podcast I mentioned dropping on Monday next week. Again, whether or not you use AI, I think it will be a really helpful conversation. Sam's awesome, and I think just really relevant, but particularly for those of you who use an SEO strategy, I think it will be a really valuable conversation for you. And then I'll be back next week. We'll have another live stream there. Oh, I always forget this. I know somebody was asking if I have any spots opening up. I am opening up a week-long strategy intensive in February. So I will drop a coaching consultation link for that. So if anybody's interested in working together, I'm opening up one of those. I don't know when my next spot will open up, but I imagine we will have one opening up soon because I have quite a couple of clients coming up for renewals. So if you're curious about that, I would book a consultation sooner rather than later so that we can have you on the wait list for that. All right, lots of love, y'all. I will see you next week. Bye.